Like I can't drink my water. All right.
Sorry.
So totally up to you, but there is an exposure in here if you want to wear a mask. They're out. If not, that's okay too. All right. Alrighty. Everyone's surviving this hot weather. The masks are totally helping with being hot, right? They're totally helping. If you want a mask, they're right here. There was like an exposure in here. Sorry, I'll probably say that a bunch of times, but I had my first soccer practice with my kids yesterday, and it was 106. I was like, I feel like the meanest coach ever. I was like, okay, go run a lap. The kids were all glaring. So I'm ready for it to cool down. We're getting there. And I think we only need to worry about, they said for a week, right? So I won't see you Monday. Monday, we don't have school, which is super exciting, right? We get a little bit of a break because we're still easing back into things. And then Wednesday, we should be in the class, right? So if anything changes, I'll obviously let you know. I came to school this morning and there were 3 COVID tests on my desk. I'm like, okay, I get the hint, thank you. But anyway, well, I forgot how miserable this was to do, to teach with like a mask on. So we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna stop complaining about it now. Maybe, we'll see. Okay. All right, so we're moving to chapter 4 today. So we're gonna look at gender rules, gender identity, sex versus gender, some gender stereotypes. This will take us like 2 days to get through. And then our next unit is on sexual orientation. So gender and orientation. And what we'll start with, I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between sex and gender, right? And this is something that interestingly, some of you ran into with your research, right? When you went out, that people didn't quite know which one we were talking about, what the definition was. So that's where we'll start. They are different things. Now, the tricky thing is when you get high enough up in like studying like gender and sexuality, we start to argue that they're kind of the same, but you have to understand how they're different first, right? So that's kind of like the first step. Sex refers to a person's biology. So biological elements, physiological elements. And if you want to know, there was an exposure anything, feel free to grab one. Go in order, you don't have to. Totally up to you. Hard to drink your coffee for that. So biology, physiology, your chromosomes, so your genetic makeup, your anatomy, right? Everything biological. Sex is something that is determined from the moment of conception. So when egg and sperm meet, a person's sex is determined already. Okay, so it's all biology, anatomy, hormones, chromosomes. Here, I'll write this up here. Anatomy, chromosomes. Right, we could also add hormones. And this is a person's sex. What are the traditional like sexes that we would identify? What would what would one example of a sex be? Male, right? What's another one? Can anyone give me one more? Intersex, great job. Okay, so intersex is somebody who possesses biological attributes of someone who is male and female. So it could be maybe some internal structures and some external structures. We'll talk a tiny bit about that a little bit down the line here. But anatomy, chromosomes, hormones, biology. Gender, on the other hand, is something that is much more socially constructed, right? Yeah.
Is that also genitals?
Yeah, right. So do you have a penis or vagina? Fallopian tubes or vas deferens? We're typically talking about like anatomy. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a mask, if you want a mask, there are some materials in it. And different classes here, right? So odd, right? So gender, again, is much more cultural, right? So I'm going to write up here. This is something that tends to be like psychological or cultural. It's something that's constructed, right? So it can be different from place to place and area to area, right? It can change over time. This one, we tend to have things like masculine, feminine, forgot the extra I, feminine, androgynous. And there's a million other terms that people use, like gender queer, gender fluid. There's a whole ton of them, but it refers to kind of how you see yourself. Do you see yourself as masculine or feminine or both or neither? Right. So it's much more built and constructed and dynamic. Yeah.
This might be this is too early in the day, but are we doing like gender as an ID thing, or is it like a Judith Butler, like you perform a social role thing?
It is more like a social role in some ways, but it's also how you view yourself, right? So if you are masculine, then you tend to meet like typical definitions of masculinity or what it would mean to be male. Like they're very connected, like sex and gender are influencing each other. But this would be more like, how do you dress? How do you act? What are your interests?
Sure, I just mean like, are we saying like genders is a socially constructed thing, isn't like how society functions, or is it like an individual thing as I identify as? Because basically, okay, I'm just trying to get down to like the xenogender thing, where people have an identity that's not socially recognized.
Sure.
But what does that actually fall under a gender, or is
Yeah, right. So it's both in a way. It's like the cultural and societal ideas, but it's also like individual identity, which is shaped by society and culture, but they don't always have to be kind of going along with each other. So it can be both personal and like societal or cultural.
okay,
Can be
so
both.
when they conflict, what do we do?
You go with what the person would prefer in general, right? And if it makes other people uncomfortable or isn't recognized, that's okay. Right? People come up with gender terms constantly, right? There's so many of them. Just when I think I have like a good like metric on them all, they add more, right? It's so hard to keep track of them. Was there another hand over here?
Yeah, going back, and I feel like, but is someone intersex if like they have all the same terms, but like, let's say they could like make like more estrogen than
So technically that doesn't, so it's typically like a mixture of physical structure. Like if we go with like the pure form of the term, but I mean, it's a spectrum. So there could be someone who's like mildly intersex versus somebody who has like a penis but fallopian tubes, which is exceedingly rare. But there are some cultures where people will be biologically female until they're a teenager and they start like puberty, and then their testicles drop out of nowhere. Exceedingly rare, not to like people like girl panic and terrified that would happen, right? But it is something that has happened. There's like a small island I'm forgetting where it is. There's this tiny island where it occurs at a very high rate because it's very genetic. But it's more that you have an intermix of structures, right? Whether it's internal. And it's not your gender, right? So if you have somebody who is like born biologically male, but feels like they should be female, right? We're talking about gender identity. So remember, sex is more like chromosomes, anatomy, and physical stuff. Okay. So your gender identity is how you perceive yourself as like masculine, feminine, other, androgynous, genderqueer, gender fluid, whatever that might be. And we all have what's called a gender role, right? And things that we tend to follow, like things that are normal or typical for your gender. And if you break gender, right, sometimes people will receive a lot of attention for that, right? And not always, right? Like if you go back to the 1950s, women couldn't wear pants. Like it was just completely socially unacceptable for women to wear pants. And now, not at all, right? Like it's totally okay. So this changes a lot, but we do tend to have these roles or injunctions of what we're supposed to do and not do for our gender. And I want you to think about this for just a moment. So you're going to need a piece of paper and you're going to turn it into me. So make sure you put your first and last name on it. And you may or may not have one, but almost every single one of us at some point in our life has received what's called a gender role injunction. Okay, so you are male, so you should do this. You are female, so you should do this. Or you can't do this, or this is expected of you. So sometimes we call these gender light bulb moments, right? Where it's like a light bulb goes off of what you are allowed to do or not do because of your gender. So what I want you to think about is on your paper, I want you to write down a time where you were aware of maybe an expectation or a stereotype or being treated a certain way because of your gender. So one example, we were at dinner a week ago, 2 weeks ago, recently, we were at dinner. My father-in-law looked at my daughter, he got in trouble for this movie. We were talking about jobs and careers, like what do you want to be when you grow up? And she was like, I think I want to be a firefighter. Like, where did that come from? Like last week he wanted to be like otter keeper. She wants to take care of otters for her whole life, right? And all of a sudden I want to be a firefighter. My father-in-law looks at her and he goes, well, girls can't really be firefighters. I was like, whoa, stop. Like, no, that's completely not true. We like ripped into him, right? But that would be a gender like light bulb moment, a gender role injunction. Women can't be firefighters, right? And so maybe that shapes the way you view what you can or can't do. Or maybe you did something and it wasn't like appropriate for somebody, right? Somebody didn't think it was appropriate for you to do. So I'm gonna give you a few moments. Try and think of one. If you think of a couple, you can do that. You can follow an example. It could be small, it could be big. But what's a time you can think of where maybe there was like a stereotype or expectation or like a push for you to act a certain way based on your gender? Okay, so write it down. Doesn't have to be involved. Again, it can be bulleted. A couple more minutes and then we'll go from there. If you're not writing, it's totally fine, keep going. But what I want you to do, just with a couple of people around you, can talk about it for just a minute. What was your moment that we don't share with everyone if you don't want to, but find a couple of people around you And just briefly share, I can kind of talk about it and then we can talk about it together.
Being a little kid, that's like, so that I was start going. But you.
Whereas now, voice don't see it. Other less like.
That's my first guy. You're not people or anything. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. 5% of violence. Oh, I was better than like I'm trying to see. Yeah. Yeah, there's like. There's about this work. So they've seen something that is so. But I'm gonna go to war today. Part of the problem is there's something not. Because other people for some benefit. So the reason that we're our innovation. They're being attacked more, so they should be like. But it's only because those people are attacking their blood. But there's the people like the research like, oh my god, war with more, you know, whatever. Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, or it's so that that's like very it's like trying to specifically dial that.
All right, did everyone have a chance to share? Does anyone need more time? So I can imagine that all of you think of one of these moments, right? I had shared with you that I had soccer practice last night, right? Some of these girls are like 7 and 8 that I'm coaching, and one of the little 7-year-olds last week, she comes up to me and she's like, "Can I ask you a question?" Like, oh, I know where this is going. I get this question like concert. It's always the little ones, right? But it was so sweet. She's like, I don't know what to call you. And I was like, well, thank you for asking. Like, that's fine. Like, are you looking for a girl? I don't know. My dad said you like to be a boy. I'm like, who's your dad? I met your dad. I was like, I wanted to go off, but and I was like, well, I know I might like look like a boy, but I am a girl. And she's like, oh, okay. Like so confused, but totally cool with it, right? Like, whatever. So my kids, like, I know why I share this with you, but my kids call me dad. In our house, I'm dad. And so my littlest was like, Dad, and oh man, that just threw everyone. Like, Dad. Like, no, you know, I'm like that. So I mean, there's so much variety of gender, right? And you can make up your own rules. You can do whatever you want, kind of like you were asking. But like in our house, I just fit dad. Like I fit the stereotype of dad, like so much better. My partner is mom, fits the role of mom. And it works for us, and that's all that really matters. As confusing as that can be for other people, it totally works in our family. But there's so much of this like gender stuff. Anyone want to share? You don't have to. I had you share in smaller groups because it's more comfortable, but yeah.
I think like this one is like whenever it's like Hanukkah or like Thanksgiving stuff, it's like, oh, this is the Thanksgiving happening.
Okay.
Like them sitting there. And then also, I feel like in my family too, my grandpa and all the men love to talk about politics and everything. And they always like mansplain things to me, you know, and it's just like it's something so I enjoy the conversation.
I can handle being part of that too. Great, thank you, yeah.
But, so I have like 4 siblings and every time like someone moved out, like the chores would change, like around the go and stuff.
Sure.
And so when my sister moved out, it was my turn to wash the dishes. And then it would have been my brother's turn to the dishwasher.
Sure.
And my dad was like, no, like he's not gonna do that, because like, he's a boy. And I was like, I got so angry because like for him,
Yeah.
it was like this is the way it works.
Yeah.
Like, so he never has to do like
Girl, boys use the dishes too.
Yeah.
All right, interesting, yeah.
I was thinking of a few, like, first, when I was like in elementary school, I always remember the teacher asking for like 2 strong boys to move something, or like
Yeah.
move something to the office, or like something like that. It would always like piss me off because I would totally do that.
I'm stronger than all
Yeah,
these fools, right? Yeah.
And then also, like, recently I've kind of come to terms with this one, but like, when I tell people I'm an English major, the first thing they say is, oh, so you want to be an English teacher? And that's not what I want to be.
Mhm.
And so, recently I overheard a guy telling his friend or someone that he's an English major. And they were like, oh, so you're gonna be a writer or a professor or something like this. And it was just like, well, that's what I want to be.
Yeah.
Like, I've never gotten a reaction before.
So just meaning completely different things to someone who's like appears female versus appears male says the same thing, right? Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of a common experience for most guys when they're younger, like, they weren't really allowed to be very emotional. Like,
Yeah.
as a kid, whenever I was crying, like, the response was always to like tell me to stop crying, to like kind of man up.
Yeah,
They really weren't allowed to feel your emotions as a kid. They kind of just told to like stifle them for the most part.
yeah, that's a really big like gender role injunction, right, for boys, right? Be tough, right? Don't cry. Yeah, I'll go here and then I'll go, yeah.
So I kind of was like experimenting with different like ways to dress,
Sure,
and
it's the right time to do it.
yeah, and for just really felt comfortable and like clothes that were too big for me. Like I was
Sure.
like swimming in clothes, just felt like very safe, and I felt good in the clothes. But a lot of my like family, less of my peers, but some of my peers, but like a lot of the people in my, not like close family, but my relatives or whatever, they would just kind of make comments about like, oh well, no boy is gonna like you if you look like that, or like you're wearing boys clothes, like if you want to look like a boy, like
Yeah.
even like just because I was wearing like a t-shirt, like I don't, just a t-shirt, you know, they were just asking like, oh well, do you even like boys? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, like what are you talking about right now? Like I literally just wanted to wear certain clothes, and they would just kind of make assumptions that
Yeah,
I would want to be a boy, or that I didn't like boys. And that because I didn't want boys to think I was pretty. So.
yeah, and that's the instant assumption, right? You have a boy who looks feminine or a girl who looks masculine, they're gay, right? Like they're gay or they're lesbian, right? There's that instant assumption that like not conforming to gender identity equals orientation, which sometimes plays out and sometimes doesn't, right? Like it's a big oversimplification. Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, we're like both have this experience, like working in a restaurant, if you're going to get something heavy or you're holding like a heavy tray or whatever.
Yeah.
The male coworkers always want to step in, even if you're not struggling at all. Or they'll like make comments, like I'll be taking ice and they're like these 2 big buckets and be like, oh, muscles, like you got it. And it's like, it's so annoying. every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But they want it to the male.
Yeah,
guys.
it is
like,
like-
it's like
Only-
that,
only
like,
to
this
women,
little
huh?
skinny male who is, like, trying to make, like struggling and needs help.
Right. No, you're on your own, you're male. You're on your own. Yeah, I'll help you. And then they'll offer you help and we'll just keep going. Was that a hand? I thought there was another hand. over here.
Similar notion as him, but from the female perspective, which is that we're too emotional and
Yeah.
not capable of that logical thought and being level-headed. And so yeah, definitely both perspectives of that
Yeah.
have consequences because we're seen as over emotional, but then males have to repress their emotions. And
Right.
I think we're also talking that males don't really see anger as an emotion. I think that they're very emotional in that sense.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. A lot of stereotypes and expectations around emotions and differences between like men and women for emotions. I have a cool, it's just a random like little clip that I found online. It's for doves, a great like like prescription, right? Like all the things that you're supposed to do to be a man, right? And there's the same expectations for women. And a lot of people identify, with their sex and gender being the same, but a lot of people don't, right? And there's nothing wrong with either. Like it's totally fine to have your gender and your sex match, and it's fine if they don't, right? But there are a lot of these expectations, and they can make life difficult for people when you maybe don't fit like the norm, or you don't want to conform to those expectations, right? Or you're strong enough to carry that ice, right? Like whatever it might be, these can sometimes get in the way of it. So if you want to pass those forward, I will take them from you. I'll talk more about some more gender stereotypes for next time. It's so funny, I was reading this one on here. Somebody was talking about differences in weight between men and women. I don't know if any of you like Veronica and the Baby Boo, the cats on TikTok. I don't know if any of you watched them. It's like they send a girl cat goes into like the vet and they're like, she's really fat, needs to lose weight, and the boy cats go in there and they're like, oh, he's nice and strong, right? Again, even with animals, sometimes we see these things play out. Yeah.
This is what I've heard was more people die from hurricanes that are named after women than men. Because they're not scared of hurricanes that are like Hurricane Hillary compared to like a hurricane named after a man.
That's funny because Hillary wasn't too bad here, right? Like at least for us anyway. That's funny. Even the hurricanes, the cats, the hurricanes, everything, right? Yeah.
Are like
Yeah.
all the male products are like manly musk, like
Yeah.
strong muscle, and then like all the girls are like lilac dream. So it's just interesting.
Oh, it's so interesting. They're so gendered, and sometimes it's the exact same product,
Yeah.
but they just give it a slightly different like scent, and it's for men versus for women, right? There's so much marketing that goes into it too. It's wild. Yeah.
They're made for men and women, like the women's one will be more expensive. Like it's the same razor, but one of them's pink, so it's more expensive.
Yeah, that's not right. Yeah, right. Same razor, but it's pink, so it costs more, right? Which probably doesn't cost any more to do than the black or gray or blue one, right? There's an interesting term that got some popularity a few years ago, and it's referenced more and more and more. The genderbread person, right? Not gingerbread, but genderbread person, right? And kind of talking about adding different layers to our gender identity. If you go back in time, right, into like the 1970s, when we started getting terms like androgyny and talking about gender a little bit more, gender was mainly like how you dressed or kind of like how you presented yourself. But there are a lot of elements to gender. It's much more than like the clothes that you choose to wear, the haircut that you have, or whether you wear makeup or not. But it has those elements to it, which is kind of like your gender expression, your identity. They talk a little bit about who you're attracted to, though traditionally that's much more orientation. But just starting to get at this idea that it's like a deeper thing, right? Your gender identity is all of your like behaviors and expressions, your clothing, your hair, the attributes, the way you would describe yourself. It's a lot of different elements. And I have a little video that talks about this a little bit, and they have a kind of a oversimplified but cool like idea. And they say that gender is who you go to bed as versus orientation is who you go to bed with. Now that's overly simplified. Your orientation is much more than who you actually have sex with, but it's kind of a nice way of keeping them, I was gonna say keeping them straight. That's a perfect pun, right? Keeping them separate, we'll say. So let me play this for you. It's relatively brief, but I think I love that they show you the way that they're sitting, right? Even just the way that you walk, the way that you sit, the way that you carry yourself is gender, right? And it doesn't have to be, but it tends to be, right? So there's a lot of stuff related to gender that we're kind of starting to talk about here. We'll talk about some more stereotypes and things next time, but let's look at some of the things that shape your gender identity in terms of biology. So sex and gender are different, but they definitely affect each other. Your sex often determines your gender. For most people, their sex and gender are the same. They don't have to be, but they often are. And so what we see is that how we come to think of ourselves as male or female or masculine or feminine or other tends to be a combination of biological stuff and environmental and like learning related stuff. So let's look at the biological part first, just a tiny bit, and then we'll get into this more when we get to anatomy in like a week. But from the moment of conception, as I mentioned, so the moment that sperm and egg meet, right, that moment we would call conception, and a new cell is formed, your biological sex is determined, right from that moment. And it's determined by your chromosomes. So women traditionally possess an XX chromosome, right, like makeup. Men traditionally possess an XY chromosomal makeup, right? So what happens is when those meet, right, if there's a Y present, then we have someone who's chromosomally male. If there isn't a Y present, then they're chromosomally female. Now, it can sometimes get a little blurry in cases of like being intersexed, but for the most part, when they meet, right, we determine your chromosomal sex. Everything unfolds from there, right? So the chromosomes are going to dictate which gonads develop. Your gonads are the female and male sex glands, right? That come from like the pituitary gland, the adrenal glands, the ovaries, the testes. And what's going to happen here is these release hormones. So your chromosomes dictate your gonads, which dictate which hormones are released. And this is going to shape what anatomy we end up being built with. So everything kind of builds on what came before. If you've ever known somebody who's pregnant or gone through that, even maybe yourself, you cannot tell the sex of a baby for a period of time. Okay, for up to like 12 to 14 weeks on average, little babies are gender, or I should say sex neutral. You can't tell, right? Boys and girls at that age, the exact same anatomy. And it's not until they've had the gonads form and the hormones released that they either specialize female anatomy or male anatomy, right? Sometimes even then it's really hard to tell. My oldest was super modest in the uterus. Like every time we try and do an ultrasound to see what her sex was, she'd like bundle up into a ball, like all the way through. We're like, I think she's a girl, but they can't tell because she's always like bundled. They're like, drink some juice. Let's see if she moves around, right? Drink the juice and she just spin with like all tucked down, right? You could never tell what her sex was until she was born. And then there was like a long pause when she came out. But everything is the same for a period of time. And then it starts to specialize. So the genetic piece, the chromosomal piece, is a really important part for what determines your sex. And those hormones often shape people's gender identity and presentation as well. I have a tiny, it's really short, but a video of like what that sex chromosome combination looks like. So I'll play that for you. It might be helpful. The variation on that, but those chromosomes combine together, which then dictate the sex, leading to the formation of the gonads, leading to hormones being released. And there are a ton of different hormones. And I want to introduce some of the big ones to you now, but we're going to talk about them throughout the semester. But they definitely play a huge role here. And I have a big list of them. Let's go through them a little together. And then again, you'll see most of these later, right? When we get to, especially like the units on anatomy and pregnancy and so on, they'll come back. So all of these hormones play a role in our formation of our sex and therefore our gender identity. They play a role in sexuality, they play a role in pregnancy, menstruation, like a whole bunch of different things, sperm formation. The androgens, if I just write like a word or two for each one. The androgens are things like testosterone, right? And these are the traditional like male hormones, right? So they play a big role in like male sexual development and sex drive. Yeah. You could if it's helpful for you. Generally, I think it might not be a bad idea, or you could take a picture of it at the end if that's easier too. So testosterone is the biggest male hormone, right? And it's theorized that one of the biggest reasons that men tend to have a higher sex drive than women, stereotypically, is because of the presence of testosterone. Now, all women possess testosterone as well, just in a much smaller concentration. And all men possess estrogens, but in a much smaller concentration than women. So we do have a little bit of both, but the androgens like testosterone play a huge role in male sexual development and sex desire drive for both men and women. The estrogen are the female sex hormones, so female sexual development. And again, men do possess these as well, just in less of a proportion. They also play a big role in the menstrual cycle, which we'll talk more about in like a week or two. Progesterone. Progesterone is secreted by the ovaries, right? And what this one does is it plays a big role in the lining of the uterus. So during pregnancy, this helps maintain that lining of the uterus, which maintains the pregnancy. It also builds it up every month to either hold on to an egg or be released through the menstrual cycle. So it plays a really big role in that. Yeah.
Is that why some abortion camps can, I guess, affect sex drive?
It could.
Because it looks different.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. So they do definitely affect your hormones most of the time. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them do drastically affect your hormones. Hormones play a big role in sex drive and also sometimes how you feel in general. And if people are tired or don't feel as good in general, they might have a lower sex drive as a result. But yeah, they change estrogen for a lot of people. And higher levels of estrogen has thought to be correlated with lower sex drive. Though it's unclear if they cause each other, right? That whole like correlation does not equal causation thing. But it is one element that could be part of it for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Strokes.
Yeah.
So I can only do progesterone,
Mm-hmm.
which I find spring like all those hormones lead to like even bigger health issues.
Yeah, right. And some people do really struggle with like any kind of hormonal influence like that. Like it can lead to strokes and seizures. It can lead to all sorts of side effects. Birth control pills have a lot of side effects. Yeah, and it's a little bit less if you take like progesterone only or POPs. They're sometimes called progesterone only pills. But yeah, it's interesting. Some people can't tolerate like extra hormone influences. It can cause issues for sure. Yeah.
I had the same experience for like the estrogen pills would give you like only basic migraines and then mimic strokes and then you can start in.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, every drug has its advantages and its disadvantages, right? It's pros and its side effects and things as well. There's a lot of side effects with medications. All right, GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. I'm gonna abbreviate it. This one is kind of an interesting, it's like a master hormone, right? So it's released by the pituitary gland. So we could put here that it stimulates pituitary gland. And it tends to kind of cause chain reactions to occur. So this gonadotropin releasing hormone is produced in the hypothalamus, and it tends to trigger the pituitary gland to release other hormones. So it's kind of like a master hormone, if you will. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. FSH is something that we use to stimulate the development of a follicle, right? Follicle stimulating hormone. A follicle is another word for an egg, right? An egg or an ovum, and like immature egg. So what happens is every month when we release, the FSH, right, it tends to help in the development of eggs or the maturation of eggs. And then also the formation of sperm in men, right? So it tends to have a couple of different things. So we could write follicle development and sperm production. LH or luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone stimulates ovulation in women. If you've ever heard of somebody trying to time like their ovulation, right, trying to see when they're ovulating to help them get pregnant, they're testing for LH. So just like a pregnancy test, they sell these little sticks that you would urinate on. And in the urine, it would detect how much LH you have. There's a big spike of LH when a woman ovulates, and that egg is released from her ovary to travel down the fallopian tube. And in those couple of days when ovulation occurs, that's when a woman is most likely to be able to get pregnant. right? So you can use that knowledge to help you get pregnant or avoid getting pregnant, depending on your goals. But we do test for that, right, as a way to see when you're ovulating. And it plays a role also in the production of testosterone in men, right? So we tend to, again, see a little bit of both for both men and women. Almost there, prolactin plays a big role in milk production. So after a woman gives childbirth, they are able to breastfeed, right? And so prolactin is a big part of that. So is the physical stimulation of the breast that happens when a baby is sucking on them. But it plays a big role in milk production, right, for women. And then finally, oxytocin. Oxytocin is a fascinating one. We'll talk about it a bunch of times. It plays a big role in orgasm, and it's released when we cuddle. Sometimes it's called the cuddle hormone. Whenever we have any kind of physical contact with another person, holding hands, cuddling with them, laying with them, engaging in any kind of sexual activity, it tends to be released. Big part of like bonding and connection with another person. It's also released when women are breastfeeding to help them connect and bond with that baby. And it plays a big role in labor as well. Yeah.
So if probably a sperm if you're trying to make partner, would there be like a lack productions like is impossible to start with?
So say a little more.
So like if I got pregnant, but like not
Sure.
actually, and I didn't have physical right, like oxytocin
Yeah.
produced that way.
Yeah.
So if would there be like a imbalance of like production or something?
Oh, no. So, interesting question though, right? So you wouldn't have that like release that comes obviously because there would be, like orgasm or like bonding or any of those things together would just be the introduction of sperm through like a medical device or procedure. But then you would progress through pregnancy totally typically out, right? So you would have the same pregnancy as somebody who got pregnant through like intercourse. And then when you gave birth, you still produce prolactin and so on. Really interesting, you don't even have to give birth to produce prolactin and breast milk. Now it's very difficult to do, but if you've been pregnant before and you have a baby that you're holding, right, sometimes people will start to produce a little bit of milk. Now, like a little bit, not a lot, right? But it can sometimes happen for people, even if they're not pregnant, right? And traditionally, it's more of like you had a baby suck on a breast and they keep doing that. The body thinks that you're needing to produce milk and might start producing milk, right? Not really easy to do, but it's definitely possible. So even without pregnancy, that can still happen. So again, you'll see these later, right? We'll come back to these multiple times, but all of them tend to play a big role in the production and like development of our sex, which shapes our gender. Yeah.
How would you define a follicle again?
A follicle is like an immature egg. So a follicle is like a cell, traditionally, and so it's an immature egg. Then once we stimulate it, that follicle will develop into a fertile, or not fertilized, but a mature. Yeah.
Is the link between being asexual and having less sex hormones?
Interesting. If there is, I'm not sure that we know, but it seems like it could be logical, right? It might be that they have less testosterone, but it's hard because there's so many factors that influence our interest in sex. Hormonally, we definitely have elements there, but then we can also just have like personality and level of interest, and then the other people that are involved. So, it's a reasonable assumption to make, though I'm not sure that we have like proved that in any way. Any other like thoughts or questions or anything? Yeah.
So like if you gave
Yep, prolactin. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Can you like, is there like or like do you just like
Yeah, if you're not producing the urine, yeah, then traditionally then that baby would then use formula. And it's not uncommon, we'll talk about this in pregnancy. It's not uncommon for people to use breast milk and formula, right? Because sometimes women don't produce enough breast milk, or they want to have a partner be able to help. So you can pump, you put it into a bottle, or you can breastfeed and bottle feed, breastfeed and formula feed. A lot of people will combine. Obviously, breastfeeding is cheaper, right? Because you're producing it. Formula is expensive, but it also contains things that breast milk doesn't. So a lot of people will combine them. You get the benefits of both, which is pretty common. I had twins, or I didn't carry them, but I have twins. I missed my opportunity to eat for 3, sadly. But I was a supportive eater. I ate for my partner. I didn't want to make her feel left out, right? Like no one should eat alone. But we had to bottle feed them because there was more of them, like as many of them as us, right? And so we would do bottles and formula and breast, right? Just to kind of balance all that. Anything else for the moment? We talked about intersexed a little bit earlier. This used to be called being a hermaphrodite. Now that's not a term that we use anymore. It's actually kind of a derogatory term at this point. The term that we would use is intersexed. But hermaphrodite came from the Greek deity, the Greek god Hermaphrodite, who was thought to possess attributes of both male and female sex. Right, so that's where the term hermaphrodite comes from. It was a common term used for a long time, right? And now the proper term to use is intersexed. So somebody who's intersexed, again, has some combination of like biological attributes of male and female, like sex organs or genitalia. Now, your book talks about something that I want you to look over. It's really uncommon. So I'm not going to spend time here because I want to focus on what's more like mainstream and common. But in your book, it starts on page 87. It talks about 2 different categories of how sex can kind of be atypical. So people can develop atypical sex based on chromosomal conditions. So maybe they have XXY, or they have like some combination of chromosomes that's just kind of off. That's a little atypical. Or it can develop due to hormones, right? So with hormonal like conditions, people can have too much or not enough of a hormone, which causes them to develop in a different way. So I might ask you to give me an example of each one of these on that first exam. I'll give you a study guide so you'll know, but make sure you kind of look those over a little bit in the book. Again, they're not super common, but they are fairly interesting, right? And something that I would like you to read about if you can. All right. Does anyone want me to leave this so you can take a picture? If you do, I can erase over there. Can you leave it? Going once? All right, I'm gonna erase this one. They told us we were getting whiteboards. I went out and bought whiteboard pens. And we still have the chalkboard, right? So they were teasing me. I got all excited and everything. I went home and I was like, I'm getting a whiteboard. And it's been a week. Maybe with a long weekend. Okay. So I want to put one more chart up here. And then I'll probably stop after that because I have a video that goes with this and I think it'll kind of take us a little bit over. So let's look at kind of like in review, the typical development of like men versus women, just to kind of put all of this together before we move on. So I'm going to make a little chart or a big chart. Okay, so we're gonna have women, men, and great. Got my chart. Okay, so reproductive cell. So women, their typical reproductive cell is going to be an egg. Or a follicle if it's undeveloped, right? An egg, an ovum, a follicle. Men, sperm. So that's a typical reproductive element for each sex. Chromosomes. Okay, so women tend to be XX and men XY. Okay, so again, that's the typical presentation and development. In terms of gonads, those reproductive elements here, women, it's ovaries. All right, so the reproductive like gonads for women are ovaries. For men, it's the testes. And again, this is if we were developing like typically, which is the norm, but there are times where it doesn't happen that way. In terms of hormones then. For women, estrogen. And for men, it's androgen. Like testosterone. Androgens. Two more internal structures. And then we'll have external structures. So the internal structures typically for women would be a uterus, fallopian tubes. And vagina. Okay, so those would be the typical female internal reproductive organs. For men, it's the vas deferens. And the seminal vesicles. And then that shapes the external genitalia or external structures that men and women tend to have. So this would be over here, we can see the clitoris, the monument in Greece, right? And the labia, which are like the lips of the vagina or the vulva. And then we have the penis and scrotum over here, the men. So again, you can kind of see how everything builds on what came before, right? The reproductive cell leads to these chromosomal-like development, which causes the gonads to develop, which release the hormones, which build the internal structures, which build the external structures. Okay, so everything kind of unfolding, and most of the time that goes as expected. So as I mentioned, starting on page 87, in your book, it talks a little bit about what can go awry and how we can get kind of atypical development. All right. So as I said, I think I'm gonna stop there. I'm not used to like teaching with this. I'm glad it's just one day. Okay, nobody gets sick, right? Don't come if you're sick. I don't know but I'm gonna stop here for today. I'll leave that up if you want to take a picture of it. And then what we'll do next time is we'll talk a little bit about how social learning and the environment can shape our gender. And we get a lot here. So be thinking between now and when I see you next week, and I will see you on Monday. So I'll see you on Wednesday, and then I get to tell you to have another good thing, right? But be thinking about some stereotypes of what it means to be masculine and what it means to be feminine. Just kind of think about it over the course of the week, because we're going to talk about it together next week. And then we'll pick up here. I love these pictures, right? With the brains of the stereotypes. So think about this a little bit over the week. I'll hang out for a few minutes if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend. Stay cool, and I will see you all not on Monday, but on Wednesday.